The conference room was silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that hums in your ears and makes you wonder if you've just gone deaf. 24 people. Executive badges. Champagne flutes still half raised. My hand still gripping the edge of the table like I might flip it. He had just finished talking, and I had just finished listening. "You're not even a threat," Cade said, like he was reading off a grocery list. "You're furniture." No one laughed, but he wasn't trying to be funny. That was the brilliance of it. His voice was calm, almost bored, like humiliating me was a daily task he had to tick off before lunch. My wife, Yara, stood exactly 4 feet to my right. I know that because I kept my eyes on her shoes the whole time he spoke. Pale green heels. Not the ones I bought her last fall. Probably a gift from him. He took a step forward. "You should sit this one out," he added, straightening the already perfect cuff of his blazer. Let her shine without the emotional weight. That was it. That was the moment something inside me unclipped. I didn't shout, didn't throw a drink, didn't even blink. I just smiled. That slow, crooked smile I haven't used since I was 17 and watched a man try to steal my brother's bike in front of our house. He thought I was weak. That was his mistake, because the camera in my jacket pocket had already been recording for 7 minutes. Because the text messages from him that Yara had been stupid enough to screenshot and delete, I had them all backed up. Because the flight I had booked for 3:15 a.m. wasn't for business. It was for her boss's wife, who had been very curious about what I discovered last week. But none of that showed on my face. All he saw was a smile. And that's what scared him. I didn't even realize my hand was shaking until I looked down and saw the condensation running off my glass like sweat. I wasn't afraid. Not of him. Not anymore. The fear had been burned out weeks ago and replaced with something quieter. Something colder. I wasn't there to confront anyone. I was there to end something. Or maybe, if I was honest, to begin something far more dangerous. After Cade delivered his little speech, the room moved on like nothing had happened. Conversations resumed. A laugh track of privileged small talk filled the air. Someone uncorked a bottle of wine with a pop that made me flinch harder than I care to admit. I heard my name once or twice in the distance, spoken like a ghost story. The husband, the outsider, the one who still showed up. I waited until Yara disappeared behind the frosted glass doors, likely off to the rooftop lounge where only the executives and their favorites were allowed. She didn't tell me she'd be leaving the main event, and I didn't ask. She assumed I'd be too spineless to follow. But that was her biggest miscalculation. Not the affair. Not the lies. It was assuming I had nothing left to lose. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket and opened the live stream. A hidden camera, placed in a custom pen, had been clipped to the meeting room's podium hours earlier. I'd used a friend's ID badge to access it. One of the few people left in Yara's life who still thought I was worth something. The angle was perfect. Crystal clear audio. Cade's words, dripping with condescension, caught in full HD. I texted a copy to myself, then another to an anonymous tip account I had discovered on the company's internal forum, ironically run by someone in HR. That would be enough to light a fuse. But I wasn't done. I made my way upstairs, heart pounding slower than it should have been. There was something surreal about it all. The music softened as I climbed each floor, almost like a score to a scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I opened the glass door to the rooftop and was greeted by artificial laughter and the scent of overpriced cologne. The air was cooler here, cleaner, the kind of air that made you feel like you could say something reckless and be applauded for it. I saw them near the back. Yara had her hand on his chest. Not in an obvious way, not inappropriate, but there was an ease there, a comfort I hadn't felt from her in over a year. She smiled like a woman who had already rewritten her life story and erased me from every chapter. Then she noticed me. Her eyes widened, not in guilt, not in fear, but in something that looked almost like inconvenience. "Hey," she said flatly, breaking away from him. "Didn't realize you were still here." "Clearly," I said. She pulled me aside, lowering her voice. "Can we not do this here?" "Do what?" I asked, tilting my head. "You mean talk? That thing we haven't done in weeks?" She sighed, brushing her hair behind her ear the way she always did when cornered. "You're making a scene." "I haven't even started," I whispered. Her brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that before the sun comes up, you're going to wish I had left when you asked me to." And just like that, I turned and walked toward the exit sign glowing red above the stairwell. I didn't look back. But I didn't need to, because I knew exactly what would happen next. And so did she. The parking garage was nearly empty, aside from the sound of my shoes echoing off the concrete. It was the kind of silence you could feel pressing against your ribs, wrapping around your throat. I'd parked on the lower level, far from the elevators, where the security cameras were real but never monitored. I knew because I checked last week. Thoroughly. Behind me, the heavy stairwell door swung open with a metallic groan. I didn't turn around. Her heels gave her away. Sharp, measured steps closing the gap, like she was approaching a child who'd wandered off. She still thought she had the upper hand. Still thought her version of damage control could put out what she hadn't yet realized was a wildfire. "Case in," she called, her voice soft but laced with irritation, not concern. "You can't just say something like that and walk away." I stopped by the driver's side door of my car, leaned on it, and finally looked at her. Yara, standing there like she'd stepped off the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Her makeup flawless. Her composure rehearsed. I'd spent years convincing myself that poise was strength. But tonight, it looked like armor. "You followed me," I said, not as a question. "Why?" She crossed her arms, her eyes scanning me like I was an unfamiliar document she didn't have time to read. "Because you're acting like a child, and you're going to ruin my night." "Your night?" I laughed, low and bitter. "Not our night." "Oh, come on," she snapped. "What do you even want from me right now?" There it was, the tone. Not angry, not pleading, just exhausted. Like I was the one who broke something and made her deal with the pieces. But I wasn't here to beg. Not anymore. I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket and tossed it onto the hood of the car. The corner of it caught the wind, but she pinned it down with a manicured hand before it could fly off. She opened it without asking. She must have known. Or maybe she was just curious enough to think it wouldn't matter. Inside, 5 pages of printed messages. Screenshots. Dates. Times. A copy of the hotel receipt from Denver, where she was supposedly attending a leadership summit while Cade just happened to be presenting the keynote. 2 photos. Nothing graphic. Just proof. His hand on her lower back in a hotel hallway at 2:13 a.m. Her keycard logs from the same night. Facts. Cold, clinical, inarguable. She didn't say anything. Instead, she looked up at me with the strangest expression, not guilt, not shock. Almost like relief. Like the act of being caught had freed her from pretending any longer. "So now what?" she asked. That was when I realized she wasn't here to apologize. She was here to see how much I knew. To gauge how far I'd go. She still thought this was a game of leverage, a corporate dispute, not a marriage in ruins. I didn't answer. I unlocked the car and got in. She stood there, holding the envelope like it weighed 10 pounds. Just before I shut the door, I looked at her and said, "You should get to him before his wife does." And with that, I pulled away, leaving her alone in the flickering garage light. My phone buzzed before I even reached the street. Unknown number. "Who are you?" Another buzz. Then, "What do you want?" I smiled. Because it wasn't Yara. It was Cade's wife. And she was ready to talk. The message was short. 3 words. No hello. No name. Just, "We need coffee." I stared at it for a full minute, rereading it like it might change. She hadn't denied anything. She hadn't played dumb. And she didn't want to talk over the phone. That alone told me 2 things. She already suspected something was off, and she wasn't surprised I had surfaced to confirm it. I drove to the cafe she suggested. Not some cozy corner place where affairs get confessed in whispers. No, it was a sleek, modern cafe attached to a private equity firm downtown. Marble walls, espresso machines louder than conversation, baristas who looked like they had law degrees. This wasn't a place for secrets. This was a place where deals were made. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth near the back, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my car. Her name was Lizette, and everything about her said control. Her posture, her eyes, even the way she stirred her coffee like she had 10 more important things to do, but chose this anyway. I sat across from her without speaking. She slid a folded piece of paper across the table before I could even say hello. It was a list. Names. 4 of them. All men. All connected to Cade's department. One of them was someone I recognized, a guy who had invited me to his daughter's birthday party 6 months ago. "They've all been moved out of the company quietly in the past year," she said, not looking up. "All demoted, reassigned, or nudged into resignations." "What does that have to do with?" "They all had wives," she interrupted. Wives who worked under Kate. Wives who left their husbands 2 to 3 months after mentorship began. I felt the back of my neck go cold. She finally looked up. You're not the first. But if I have anything to do with it, you'll be the last. It was like sitting across from someone who had already written the ending and was now offering me a chance to read it before the book hit the shelves. I have documents, I said quietly. Footage. Email logs. Enough to cause real problems. She smiled. I don't want problems, Kaysen. I want outcomes. I nodded slowly. And what exactly does that look like? I want him ruined. But not fired. Not yet. I want him exposed first. Publicly. Where it hurts. Before they let him fall with a severance and a resignation letter he gets to write himself. My throat was dry. And Yara. Lizette tilted her head, as if that part didn't matter. If she burns too, that's her choice. She knows what she did. I left the cafe with a USB drive and a burner number. She told me to disappear for a few days, not to contact Yara, not to stir the pot. She said it like a command, but I understood. She needed time. Quiet was the most dangerous part of the plan, and the most powerful. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a budget hotel off the interstate. No questions, no ID check. I laid on the stiff mattress and stared at the ceiling, wondering how the hell I got from, maybe we're just drifting apart, to being in a conspiracy with a billionaire's wife to dismantle her husband's career from the inside out. Then, around midnight, my phone lit up again. Yara. No message. Just a photo. It was our living room. Except my office drawer was open, and the envelope I had printed the evidence into was ripped in half on the floor. She had found out. She knew I'd made my move. But what she didn't know, and what I wasn't about to tell her, was that I had never left anything important in that envelope. The real material? That was already on Lizette's desk, and the clock had just started ticking. By morning, my name was on a list. Not a literal one. Not yet, but I could feel it. The cold shift in the way Yara texted me, the sudden absence of her passive aggression, replaced by something eerily polite. She sent me a message at 7:12 a.m. Hope you're okay. Let's talk today if you're free. No punctuation out of place. No spelling errors. The kind of message you send when you're no longer angry. You're strategizing. But I didn't reply. Instead, I went silent. On purpose. Let her wonder. Let her think I was unraveling or hiding or maybe just watching. The truth was worse. I was working. Lizette had put me in touch with a man named Brenner. That wasn't his real name. His real name didn't matter. What mattered was that he specialized in strategic media pressure. Not leaks. Not blackmail. Just well-placed spotlights. The kind that shine just a little too brightly in the wrong direction. We met in a parking lot behind an art museum that had been closed for renovations since last year. I half expected him to show up in a trench coat or whisper like we were in some Cold War thriller. But he was normal. Too normal. Wore a hoodie. Sipped gas station coffee. Told me calmly, we'll make it look like they outed themselves. That was the plan. Not revenge. Not exposure. Implosion. By the next day, anonymous tips were submitted to 3 internal compliance inboxes at Yara's company, all referencing vague but specific details. Phrases like inappropriate mentorship culture and performance-based favoritism. Nothing illegal. Nothing slanderous. Just enough to trigger HR protocols. Then came the accidental inclusion of Cade and Yara's emails, the ones we knew had gone well past professionalism. A forwarded conversation, subject line unchanged. Denver was worth the risk. No attachments. No photos. Just words. Words that, out of context, could still melt reputations. It was surgical, and they never saw it coming. I kept my distance from Yara entirely. Let her spiral. Let her paranoia do what I never could. Let it tear her from the inside. When I was home, she wasn't. When I was gone, she'd text. Harmless things. Do you still want to talk? I miss you. Whatever this is, let's not make it ugly. But it was already ugly. She just didn't know how composed I could be while standing in the wreckage. By Thursday, Kate had deactivated all comments on his LinkedIn posts. His most recent one, ironically titled Building Teams Through Trust, had quietly disappeared overnight. By Friday, a junior employee from another department posted a cryptic tweet. It's always the ones with the corner offices. The tweet went viral within the company's internal Slack like wildfire in dry grass. No names. No proof. But the tension was everywhere now. A storm cloud with no clear origin. And by Saturday, Lizette called. She didn't ask for updates. She said, "It's working. His hands are shaking in meetings." I asked her if she wanted to press further. "No," she said. "Now we wait. Let them show their own cracks." Later that night, I returned home briefly to grab a change of clothes. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that makes your skin feel watched. Yara wasn't there. But on the table was a neatly folded piece of paper. My name on the outside in her handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I sat down. Let the silence stretch. Because after everything, the lies, the manipulation, the calculated control, part of me still wanted to believe there was something inside worth reading. But I knew better. And when I opened it, what I found was worse than I imagined. The envelope was plain. No wax seal, no perfume, no melodrama. Just a single sheet of paper folded with precision, like she'd done it a dozen times in her head before writing a single word. I held it in my hands longer than I should have, hoping that maybe, there would be something inside that changed the trajectory. A confession, maybe. A breakdown. Something human. Instead, it was a blueprint. Kaysen, I know you know. I'm not going to insult you by pretending I don't. I just need you to understand that what's happening right now is bigger than both of us. And in some twisted way, I think you've always known that. You never wanted to win. You wanted to matter. This thing with Cade, it wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was survival. He opened doors you never could. I stepped through because standing still felt like dying. You said once that love is sacrifice. So I'm asking you to let go, for me. For you. If you burn everything down, you'll be standing in the ashes alone. And I don't think you're built for that. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be. Why? There it was. No apology. No regret. Just a manifesto from a woman who saw betrayal as business strategy and still expected me to walk away clean. As if I had just caught her shifting departments at work, not rearranging our life like a chessboard. I reread the letter 3 times. The part that gutted me wasn't the betrayal. I'd made peace with that. It was the sentence, "You never wanted to win." Because she was right. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was trying to be seen by her. And when that failed, I tried to make sure she saw herself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony with the letter beside me, just watching the city move on without me. Somewhere out there, Lizette was preparing her final blow. Kate had gone radio silent. His account scrubbed. Yara had pulled the pin and dropped it at my feet, hoping I'd be too soft to let it detonate. And maybe I would have. But then I opened my laptop. I hadn't planned on it. My hands moved without thinking. I logged into our shared drive, the one Yara had forgotten we both still had access to. I searched her folder labeled Personal. Inside, dozens of documents. Travel itineraries, self-reflection journals from a couple's retreat we never went on, screenshots from Slack conversations with HR. And then I found it. A draft of an email addressed to Cade, written 3 weeks ago, never sent. I'm starting to think Kaysen's suspects. He's not stupid. Not in the ways that matter. But if he finds out, I'll handle it. He's used to being overlooked. He won't fight. I'll manage the fallout. He's predictable. I stared at the word predictable for a long time. Because she was right, until now. I forwarded the entire folder to a secure drive and deleted the access log. Then, with a calmness that didn't feel like mine, I wrote one email. Not to her. Not to Cade. To everyone. Her team. His supervisor. PR, compliance. Board advisors. No commentary. No accusations. Just attachments. And one subject line. Consider this a courtesy. By the time I pressed send, my heart wasn't even racing. There was no guilt. No fear. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after you finally stop trying to prove you're worth something to people who profit off your silence. I closed the laptop. And I waited. I didn't have to wait long. The silence lasted exactly 5 hours and 13 minutes before the first domino fell. At 9:41 a.m., the company's Slack channel known unofficially as the Fire Escape, a place where middle-tier employees whispered about policy changes and leadership failures, blew up. One message. Pinned. Anonymous post. The title read, "Abuse isn't always loud." Attached was a folder link. Inside it, every file I had sent. I hadn't posted it. That wasn't my plan. I'd submitted the evidence quietly, through proper internal channels. But someone inside, someone who had been watching, waiting, had decided to go public. They wanted the rot exposed in full daylight. And now it was. By 10:17, Cade's name was trending locally on LinkedIn. By 10:45, two employees from HR sent out a vague mass email about internal ethical review processes and leadership structure realignment. By 11:03, Yara called me. I didn't answer, not because I was done, but because I wasn't ready to hear her voice pretend it was all still salvageable, that she could patch this together with the same spin she used in boardrooms and Zoom calls. Instead, I watched. I watched as news quietly leaked to industry blogs. Not tabloids, not gossip sites, trade publications. The kind with readerships that actually mattered to people like Cade and Yara. One headline stood out. When professional boundaries become personal leverage, a leadership culture on the brink. There were no names in the article, but it didn't have to say them. Anyone who knew them, anyone who had worked under them, knew. The article referenced anonymous testimonials. 4 of them. I recognized the tone of one as Lizette's. Another was clearly written by a former junior executive who'd been shuffled out last quarter without warning. It wasn't just me anymore. It never was. And yet, through all of it, I felt strangely numb. Not vindicated. Not triumphant. Just still. Until I checked my email. There was a message from Lizette. One line. They've scheduled an emergency board meeting for tonight. Attached was a calendar screenshot confirming it. She'd done it. She had pushed them into the corner. And now, like clockwork, the people who once drank their champagne and quoted their keynote speeches were drafting severance packages and rewriting the narrative. Not out of morality. Out of preservation. I shut my laptop and took a walk. No destination. Just movement. I ended up sitting on a bench outside the courthouse downtown. It was cold. Loud. Alive. Everything I hadn't felt in months. And then my phone rang again. Not Yara. Not Lizette. Cade. His name just sat there on the screen like a challenge. Against better judgment, I answered. He didn't speak at first. I could hear traffic behind him. A horn. A gust of wind. Then, finally, you don't know what you've done. His voice was calm. Too calm. I do, I said. You just don't know what I'm going to do next. A pause. Then a bitter chuckle. She was never yours, man. You just filled space. And you were never a threat, I said, voice even. You were just the spark. Before he could reply, I hung up. Because it wasn't about proving I was better than him. It was about proving I wasn't beneath them. Later that evening, I got a message from Lizette again. He's finished. The board voted. He'll resign before Monday. Then, a second message. Yara might still have a way out. They're offering her a lateral transfer. Quiet exit. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because what I did next would change whether she got to walk away clean or be remembered for what she really was. I never thought the end would feel so quiet. No dramatic press release. No courtroom drama. Just a whisper campaign that became a scream and then silence. In the end, that's what buried Cade. Not the evidence, not the board vote, not even Lizette's relentless precision. It was the silence. No one stood up for him. No one covered for Yara. When the curtain dropped, it didn't crash. It floated. On Monday morning, Cade submitted his resignation. It was spun with the usual language, pursuing new opportunities, grateful for the journey. Time for a new chapter. But the eyes reading that email weren't fooled. Not after what they'd seen. He was done. Reputation scorched, legacy crumbled, relevance gone. Yara lasted another week. Lizette had been right. They gave her an off-ramp. A transfer offer to a smaller division across the country, quiet and strategic. But Yara didn't take it. Maybe pride stopped her. Or maybe it was the way I never called her back, never showed up to the apartment, never sent a single reply. She left a box outside the door of my temporary rental. It held everything she thought I'd want back. The watch I bought her on our 5th anniversary, the photo of us from the cabin trip I loved, and she faked enjoying, a pair of socks she always stole from my drawer. On top, a note. You don't need to forgive me, but I hope you let go of me. And strangely, I already had. The version of her that hurt me no longer existed. The version of me that needed her approval? He didn't exist either. Not anymore. It took a while to feel normal again. I started running in the mornings. Not for fitness, just for motion. I started reading fiction again, novels I used to mock because I thought realism was nobler. I visited my brother upstate and held his newborn daughter in my arms. I didn't cry, but I thought about how easily we forget to protect the softest parts of ourselves. Lizette kept in touch, occasionally. Not often. Just the occasional message. He's writing a book now. Fiction. About leadership. Of course. We laughed, but only a little, because neither of us needed to linger in that world anymore. We had stepped outside the storm and left the thunder behind us. Months passed. One afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop far from the city, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and chalkboard menus. I opened my laptop, not to check emails or dig for dirt, but to write. Just for me. Not about her. Not about him. Just ideas. Thoughts. Hope. The barista smiled at me as she brought over my tea. You working on something big? She asked. I looked at the screen. A blank document. A blinking cursor. Not yet, I said. But I will. And for the first time in a long, long time, I meant it.